Hey everybody, Greg Pruitt here with the Idaho Dispatch, and I am joined by Mr. John Dionne Jr. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, Greg. How are you?
Good. Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking to us. One thing we try to do differently with Idaho Dispatch is to interview candidates from all parties or people who are running that aren't even affiliated with a party but are running for office. And so we're doing our best to reach out to statewide candidates, and typically actually wouldn't ask the Libertarian to interview right now before the primary, but all of a sudden there was a Libertarian primary, and so we scrambled and did our best to reach out to both of you. So yeah, really thanks for coming on. So really the first question I have for most candidates is, why are you running for governor? I mean, you're not an elected official as far as a state legislator or lieutenant governor or anything like that. You're going for the quote unquote top spot in the state. So number one, why the top spot? Number two, what kind of drove you? What was your decision-making process to run for governor and run for governor on the Libertarian ticket?
So to answer the first part of the question, the reason I went for the top spot is because that is where you can actually enact the most change. I've had people ask me, why don't you run for mayor first and be mayor of Boise and then proceed on like that? So running as a mayor and being elected as a mayor, I can only enact a certain change at the city level that I'm at. So I decided to run for governor because that's where I could have the most impact on all Idahoans, not just a small group of Idahoans. And what made me run for governor is I served the country for 20 years in the U.S. military. I was in the U.S. Navy. I fought in both Gulf Wars. So I've served my country, and I retired about 16 years ago, and I've watched politicians divide this country, and it's divided so badly because you have Democrats on one side who's always pushing their agenda. You have the Republicans who's always pushing their agenda, and under the Constitution and under my understanding of the way our founding fathers set this great democracy up, it was about individual freedoms. And so I ran because we need to quit pushing our agenda on other people and start living our lives under our own ways, and quit having laws made by special interest groups that are pushed onto us by legislators who just throw them out there and make that law that governs me and you don't have a say in that. So I want to give voice back to the people of Idaho and allow them a chance to say, hey, you know what? We don't like this law. Don't sign it, because I will not sign any legislation that hasn't been before the people unless it is within the powers of the Constitution of Idaho and within the power of the Constitution of Idaho for the legislator to pass laws. I will veto every single law they put on my desk, because that's not our power. The power is in the hands of the people, not in the hands of the government.
Okay. And so, was there any one particular issue? I mean, you made it sound maybe more of a broad, long-term problem. And then was there something that just one day, like, snap, I got to run for governor?
Like I said, it was just, I'm tired. The whole thing that finally snapped it for me is, I'm so tired of people telling me how to live my life because of their views or their values. And I've talked to other people, and a lot of people feel that same way, but they're afraid to say something. So, I mean, that's basically what it was. The country is so divided right now. We need to come back together as a country. And that's kind of what's the driving force behind why I'm running for governor, is because we need to get somebody in who can work with both sides and bring us back to a center position where this country normally is. But right now we're divided. I mean, this country is horribly divided.
Okay. So before we get into the issues too much, how do you, third parties are typically extremely difficult to run on. How do you plan on bringing in voters from the Republican side and the Democrat side? And maybe you have to bring in more Republicans in the long term, because there's more Republicans in the state, obviously, than Democrats. So, how are you going to appeal to them to vote for you, for instance, over whoever the Republican nominee is going to be?
And that's going to be that's the hardest part. And one of the things that I said in an interview with one of the papers up north is that what I have to do is convince Idaho, don't go into the into the booth as a Republican, and don't go into it as a Democrat. Go into it as an Idahoan. Listen to what the candidates are telling you. Do they answer the question, or do they just beat around the bush like most politicians do? If they aren't answering the question, it really means that they don't have an answer to that question, and they're only talking on talking points. That's why I love this interview, and I think I had said a little bit to you, is because you're going to get straight out. This is me and nothing else. So, like I said, it's been a long-term, 8 decades have got us where we're at, and we're not going to fix this overnight. So what I need to do is, like I was saying, is convince them to come to the polls as an Idahoan, not as a Republican or a Democrat. So, and then if you can start convincing them of that, and then they listen to the message, because like I was saying, politicians beat around the bush. Well, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Listen to the message just being out there. Is the problem being discussed, and does the candidate actually have a solution, and is that solution going in the right direction? So, like with me. And here you go. This will be a little bit of a tight policy type thing. So it's been 8 decades to get where we're at. I can't fix it overnight, but let's say my vision of Idaho is a free Idaho from overtaxation, government overreach, and government control of our lands. So what do you do to get there? Well, I have 4 things that I'd like to get done my first year in office. And when we want to get there, we can discuss those. But these 4 things are steps that the people of Idaho can actually look at and say, he said he was going to do that to get us to this goal, his vision of a free Idaho. And he went to this step, and then there's this one. And this. So he's got 4 steps completed in his vision. Now, what's he going to do over his next 4 years? If a candidate can't give you that, then they don't have a plan to get you to where we need to go. And that's what how I'm going to get Republicans to come to this side, is because I have conservative values. And if they look at the Libertarian Party, it's a conservative party. It's what conservatives were 50 years ago. Less government, more freedoms. And so that's how we're going to get them to come over and vote with us.
Okay. So yeah, we can dive into the issues now, and usually what I'll do is ask candidates what are some of the top issues that you are focused on in the campaign. So
the issue, like I said, is to get Idaho number 1 off of being a welfare state. We get almost 40 or 30, over 35% of our money comes from the federal government. So we have to get out of that, and then it's the overtaxation. It's government being on our lands and telling us how we can use our lands, which they have no right to do. So that's the issue. So my first goals that I want to do to get out of that issue is we need to get overtaxation down. We need to start taking care of the people of Idaho. Well, how do we do that? The first thing, and I've already said this, is that I'll give the legislator 100 days to have on my desk, if elected a governor, the repeal of the grocery tax and the proposed cuts in government spending to get rid of that grocery tax. I'm not going to play this game, we discussed it. No, you're going to do it because we told the people of Idaho 4 years ago we were going to do it, and you didn't do it. Either you do it, or I'm going to repeal it through an executive order, and I will tell you what cuts are going to be made in the spending. And that's not the way that it's supposed to be. Executive orders should only be used for emergencies, but I would suppose that this is an emergency when the legislator won't act for the betterment of Idahoans. The second part of that is then let's get the state out. Let's privatize the liquor business in Idaho. Get Idaho out of the liquor business. That's going to cut down on long-term expenditures with state employees, benefits, and everything else. You have to cut spending in order to cut taxes. And you have to go about it in a reasonable way, just like with the privatization of liquor business. I would offer through the state funding, the employees of the liquor stores right now to purchase the liquor license and the inventory at no interest. And then look, now not only did we cut spending, but how many business owners did we just make in Idaho that probably wouldn't have ever been able to own a business? Okay. So there's ways to do it. You just have got to come about it in a common sense way, and you have to be willing to listen to the people around you. Listen to the Idahoans. Idahoans have been telling us, look, we're overtaxed, but yet nothing's being done about it. And this is a Republican state. Republicans used to honestly believe in less government, and we don't have less government.
Okay. So I want to, I guess, jump back just briefly on the grocery tax. That was a big topic of discussion again this year. It was attempted multiple times through different avenues by some legislators to get that repealed. Governor Little, when he was running in 2018, had expressed support for it. It hasn't gotten gotten to the governor's desk since then, since Governor Otto vetoed it. So what do you say to those conservatives, though, who say, hey, look, we want to get this done. We're going to try and get it done, but we definitely don't want to do it through an executive order because that's not the appropriate way to do it.
Well, and it's not the appropriate way to do it. An executive order should only be used as a last case issue. But you know what? If those conservatives aren't willing to do what they're elected to do, then you have to take a drastic measure. And that's an unfortunate truth. But if you're really conservative and if you're really for the people of Idaho, and if you were elected and they ask you to repeal the grocery tax and you won't vote for it, then you have failed the people that elected you into that position. And this is what I would say to anybody listening to this. When it comes time at the polls, get rid of them all. Vote them all out of office and put a whole bunch of new people in there, and then let's see what type of results you get.
Okay. So let's kind of jump into healthcare a little bit. This is always a big topic of discussion. It seems like every election year with healthcare costs continuing to rise. How would you as governor propose helping lower healthcare costs in the state?
So, the easiest way to lower healthcare costs is through free market. But so let's think about healthcare. I'm 57 years old. When I was a kid, I went to the doctors. I didn't have healthcare. My doctor negotiated with me a cash payment. Let's call on the doctors to go back to that and get rid of using healthcare for everything and negotiate on a sliding scale. Hey, you make less than $12,000 a year. I'll charge you $15 an office visit so you have preventative healthcare with your family. Okay. And I make more than that. So, hey, I might pay $40 a visit, but I can afford to pay the $40 a visit and let the health insurance go back to what it was for: catastrophic events in people's life. And watch what happens to the price of healthcare. That's a common sense type of answer to the question, but nobody wants to hear that. Nobody discusses that. We just want the insurance companies to keep making billions of dollars and people not having health insurance, and then getting sold a bill of lies and about, hey, let's do health care for all, and it really won't cost you that much money, but yet it's costing millions of dollars more than it was told that it was going to cost us.
Okay. Let's switch over to guns, Second Amendment. This is a topic also that tends to come up during the elections in Idaho. What are your views on the Second Amendment?
So here's my views on something that is very critical. And this is where a lot of politicians, and I hear it, I love it, because it makes me laugh at them because it shows how much of a politician they are. You hear them say, I'm strong on the Second Amendment. I'm strong on the Second Amendment. As a politician, I am sworn to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And part of the Constitution of the United States is the Bill of Rights. And in the Bill of Rights is the Second Amendment. It will not be encroached, period. But that also goes for the First Amendment, the Third Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, 10th Amendment. That is the law of this land. That is what the governor of this Idaho is supposed to be enforcing. That is what the legislator in this state is supposed to be enforcing, and they don't. It's willy-nilly. We'll just enforce it the way we want to enforce it. That is the law, period. Those are the laws that, as the governor of Idaho, I have to enforce. Those are the laws that the president of the United States are supposed to enforce, and they don't. So, I mean, I'm sorry I get real passionate about that, but for me, I hear these people talk that I'll be strong on every one of your rights. And the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment through the 10th Amendment, I have to defend and protect, and I will with my life, because I already stood up and swore an oath to the Constitution as a military man, and I would do it as the governor of the United States, or the governor of Idaho. So the Second Amendment, to me, that's your right. And it will not be infringed in the state as long as I am a governor of the state, and honestly, it will not be infringed on me as long as I have my guns and I defend myself with them. So,
okay.
so I got passionate about that, but that's really that.
Sure. And there's a wide ranging view on this too, because, I don't know very many Democrats running that I've talked to that say they don't believe in the Second Amendment. And then you have maybe more moderate Republicans that say the same thing. Again, everybody on the campaign trail, regardless of party and where they stand on that spectrum, say they support the Second Amendment. So let me throw out a couple of the issues and you can just kind of touch on those. What about universal background checks or red flag laws, for instance?
I don't believe in a red flag law, and the universal background check, we do background checks now. Now, the thing that the Democrats and everybody that I've talked to about that, well, they don't do them. There's loopholes. They don't do them at gun shows, and they don't do them for private sales. Well, you're right. They don't. But if I sell my gun to a convicted felon, I think that I can be held liable for that if he does something with it, because, it's my serial number. And then all of a sudden, well, how'd he get that gun? I sold it to him. Well, he's a felon. Did you know so that's, the red flag laws and the loopholes that they talk about are they're asinine. What we need to start doing is enforcing the law and the way that it needs to be enforced. And the way that it needs to be enforced is every American has the right to keep and bear arms. It doesn't say how you get to buy them. It doesn't say any of that. It doesn't say that if you are deemed by your neighbor to be mentally incompetent and they call the sheriff, that the sheriff can come take my guns until the sheriff proves that I'm not incompetent. Because if I'm not mistaken, in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot we're in the new America where you're guilty until you're proven innocent, right? So those type of laws are that's just people trying to encroach on your Second Amendment. And they're going to do it in any way they can. So they come up with all these new ways of doing it. Oh, the red flag law or this, just like with magazine sizes. I had a gentleman arguing that with me the other day, and I told him flat out, I says, if you look, more murders are more mass murders too are done with pistols than they are with ARs. But they don't want to hear that because the AR looks scary. Okay. My pistol don't look scary, but I'll guarantee you, if you're looking down the barrel of it, it looks scary. So, those are just ways for them to try to encroach on my rights and your rights and freedoms. And I can't say anything more on that. That's all that is.
Okay. All right. Let's take a shift and go to education. Again, another big topic. The Reclaim Idaho is running a ballot initiative. There's always debates now in the legislature regarding education funding, in particular, how much is too much or how much is too little, or is it at the right spot? And then shifting to, what is taught in education, and CRT has been a major topic of discussion across the country, including here in Idaho. So what are your views on education?
So with education, my view on education is this, that education of the child is up to the parents. So if the parents have their kid going to a school and their school is teaching them stuff that they don't think is right, that parent should be able to pull that child out of that school and put them anywhere they want. And the funding follows the kid. It doesn't stay in the school, okay? Because it's the child that's being educated, not the educated. So if you wanted, so we'll use this as an example. Let's say Boise and Bora are teaching super left stuff, and all the parents in those schools want to pull their kids out and send them to Bishop Kelly, because Bishop Kelly is a little bit more, or Bishop Kelly is a Catholic school. Actually, I think it used to be. I think it still is. But anyway, so they want to send them to Bishop Kelly. All that money from those children or those kids should go with those kids to Bishop Kelly, because now Bishop Kelly has to expand. Okay. And Bora and Boise High just lost all their funding because the parents pulled their kids out. So it's the right of the parent to have their child educated the way they want their child to be educated, not the way I want them educated, not the way the federal government wants them educated, the way they want them educated. Those are their children, their responsibility. The funding of those children, that funding needs to go with the child. So if the parent wants to stay home and homeschool, that money should go to that parent so that they could have a parent at home homeschooling. And it should come with zero strings attached. But the problem is funding for education comes with strings attached from the federal government. This is what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. And that's what we need to cut. That's why we need to get rid of the funding from federal government and make it Idaho funding, because it needs to be follow our kids, and it needs to come with no strings attached on their education.
Okay. Let's talk about one of the other biggest issues in Idaho, and in particular, this one with the Libertarian Party can be somewhat difficult, but the issue of abortion. There's a lot of libertarians I've talked to that are pro-life, but they don't want the government in any part of it, and that's a big sticking point for a lot of conservatives, because conservatives want the government to protect the baby. So, where are you at on abortion personally, and how do you deal with that as a libertarian?
So here, I am pro-life. Okay, I honestly believe that if I cannot protect the unborn child and the innocent of that child, that I can't protect our liberties. But I am like the Libertarian Party. The government shouldn't be involved in it. And this is what I'm going to say to anybody who wants to, and they can argue this point all they want. You have free choice. Everybody in this country has free choice. Every Idahoan has the freedom to choose to live the way they wish to live, to choose to go out. If they choose to take a gun and kill somebody, that they have that right. They have free choice. And that point, that means that no other Idahoan has the right to tell them how to live, how to think, how to view something, or put their values on. So if we talk about that, I believe that it is murder for a woman to go have an abortion. So I think the woman and the doctor are murderers. And I'll stand outside any abortion clinic and say that to somebody coming out. But I don't think the government does have the right to make laws and enact on that. What the government does have the right to make a law on is if a woman in California has an abortion, how does it affect you? It doesn't. Okay. So if she has an abortion and uses insurance and she has the same insurance company as you, does it affect you? Yes, it does. So what I would say to Idahoans is the government can't make laws on free choice, but what we can do is say, you know what? You cannot use insurance. You and one other person, and it wasn't me, did an act that made a baby, and you're choosing to abort it. You pay cash for it. Don't put because that, once again, if you're using insurance, it affects me, then I have the right to say something. And the other part of that the law can do is say there's two people. And if the man wants the child and the woman doesn't, and she decides to abort it anyways, once she aborts it, he can take her to the civil court and civilly sue her. Because trust me, I was raised Catholic, and I think that it's a travesty that we even have these conversations. But if we raise our kids right, so I'll tell this to any conservative listener: raise your child right, raise them with your conservative values, that abortion is wrong. And when it comes time and their child gets into a situation like that, their child's going to make the right choice because of their upbringing. So that's the thing that people don't really want to hear. They don't want to hear somebody say, we've done the right thing. We've raised our children right. Now they get to go on, but we don't have the right to tell somebody else how to live their life, period. Live and let live. You live and choose how you want to. I live and choose the way I want to. And the consequence, you deal with it. I don't have to deal with the consequences for your choices. You don't have to do mine. So, and that's really hard. That it's a hard thing to separate those two. when you're running for an office. It really is. I mean, it's tough, but the fact of the matter is we just really don't have the right to tell somebody else what they can and can't do. And we just have to get past that because it does not affect you personally.
Okay.
You know?
So you mentioned something during that has also been a hotly debated topic in Idaho and other parts of the country is you said that abortion is murder. And if murder is against the law, should the woman or the doctor be held accountable?
So, they should be, but the whole thing of it is until you, the people of Idaho, and we're going to go back, it's kind of going to go back to the beginning when I had said something else. If you, the people of Idaho, want a law, 2/3 of Idaho has to vote yes on it to make it a law, and then it becomes a constitutional amendment, and then it becomes a law that I, the governor, can enforce. So if we want to make abortion illegal, you make it a murder. 2/3 of the people vote on it. You send it out to all the people of Idaho. Constitutional amendment. You do that. Blah. Then I have to enforce the law, right? But right now it's not the law, and they're making willy-nilly laws. Oh, the heartbeat law. Well, that's just the legislator. I didn't get a vote on it. You didn't vote on it. No other Idahoan voted on it. Okay, that was written up by a legislator because people, and they're trying to appease a certain portion of their public. And I understand that, but you can't always appease them. Sometimes you have to upset people so that they understand that the right thing to do is to if we want to make it a law, we need to vote on it as a constitutional amendment, and then it can be a law. And until then, it's subjective. And that's it's hard to hear somebody say something like that. And it's hard for me to say that, but it's the truth. It's subjective because right now, it doesn't say that that's murder, but I consider it murder. You may consider it murder. So if enough of us consider it murder, then let's make it a constitutional law that abortion is murder, and then somebody can be held accountable for it.
Yeah, and that does, because it's a constitutional amendment, it would have to go through the legislature 2/3 and then to a vote.
Yes,
actually bypasses the governor completely, and then once it becomes law, then you would have the ability to enforce that. But for everybody watching on how a constitutional amendment is done, so you can't do a constitutional amendment through a ballot initiative, for instance.
Yeah,
go through the state legislature.
But once it goes through the legislature, it still has to go to the people for a vote because
Correct.
2/3 of the people have to. Yes, and that's what I mean is if you want to do that, let's make it a law. But we can't willy-nilly it and just make it, because that does not. It doesn't really help anything. It just divides the country even more on a subject that is touchy, And like I said, my mom, she raised me as pro-life. So that's just the way that I've always been, and that's the way I'll always be. But I do also, like I said, I don't believe that the government has the right to make laws that take away somebody's freedom of choice or somebody's liberties or somebody's freedoms.
Okay. All right. Is there any other issues that we have not covered that you feel are important for your campaign or that you're talking about when you're out talking to the people?
Well, I just talk about we need to take care of Idahoans. We talk about my whole thing is I have to try to represent all Idaho. I can't just represent, the people who agree with me because people aren't always going to agree with me. I'll tell you this right now. You look at the Republican Party. I'll guarantee in the Republican Party, you have pro-life, you have pro-choice people. Nobody's always going to agree. So what we got to do is do what's best for everybody. And like I said, when it comes down to the libertarian tickets and we talk about less government, we have to cut government spending so that way we can cut down government. It puts money back into the hands of Idahoans. And then Idahoans can do what was supposed to have been done in the first place, is invest back into their communities. Okay. And that's what is important. And what we need to remember is Boise, the governor in Boise doesn't know everything that needs to be done in Garden City, but Garden City knows what they need. So by taking the money from Garden City and taxes and then putting it in a big pot and shaking it up and dispersing it the way they want to do, you're doing a disservice to Garden City. So when I talk about that, that's big government. That's what we're talking about, is we need to downsize all of that so that we can put money back into the hands of the citizens so that they can then reinvest it back in their communities. And something that I put on a website and that I read, and this was said by Robert Taft: in order for the people to control their government, they have to have access to their government. Most people don't have access to the federal government, and that's why it's out of control. Most people don't have access to the state government, and that's why they're out of control. County government, it's hard, might be hard for them to get to a county meeting. So, but every single Idahoan has access to their city government. All they have to do is take an hour a week to go to a city council meeting and tell them, this is what we need. We're willing to do a bond, and we're willing to give you the money in a tax of X amount of money to cover this cost that we're going to incur. And as soon as it's paid for, the tax goes away and the money comes back to us. That's how we can control our government, is by having access to it. And that is one thing that I've said in my entire campaign, is you have to have access to control it. And right now, nobody has access, or they don't want to control it. But they do want to complain about how bad it is.
Okay. So one final question, and then we'll go into where you can do your campaign pitch. What makes you the best candidate for the Libertarian Party to represent the Libertarian Party in November compared to your opponent, Paul Sand? And I'm not saying you have to mudsling or anything, but what makes you the best candidate for the party?
Well, so I'm the only one that has the party's backing. I actually am endorsed by the party already. And, I'm not going to mudsling. I have nothing to do with it. Paul Sand's been in politics before. I haven't. And sometimes you need that fresh view. I think I don't know if I've brought up anything with you that might have clicked something in your head that said, I did not think of something like that. But if I have, that's just a fresh view from a different point of view. And we can take that view and, not mold it. But hey, I have a website. I have an email. Send me an email and say, hey, I liked what you said on this subject, but can we expand on it? Or is there a way that we can work this? Because that might not work, but this might work. And that's the difference between me and a politician, is I'm going to listen to all the inputs. Because another thing that I said on my website is, or actually I said this in a letter to somebody from Eastern Idaho when they sent me, instead of us looking to the government for answers, look within ourselves, because within us is the answer. And you might actually have the solution to the problem, but you're afraid to say something because you don't want to be criticized. Don't be afraid. We need to be able to speak our mind and say, hey, you know what? I agree with what he's saying, even though it might not be popular where I'm at. And that's the thing, is that's what kind of really separates me, is I'm willing to listen to everybody. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to give in to you, but I'm going to listen to your input, because the more input that you can get in any position, whether you're the CEO of a company or the president of the United States, the more input that you can get and the more input you're willing to listen to, the better decisions that you can make to govern everybody that you're supposed to govern, or lead the people that you're supposed to lead. And that's what leadership is about, is being able to listen, being able to analyze, being able to put things together, bring a solution together from all the inputs that you're getting, give that solution out and get everybody to want to be excited about that solution and work towards that goal that solution is taking you towards. That is what leadership's about. And that is what separates me. With 20 years, I've had a lot of leadership training, so I actually understand all of those things.
Okay. All right. Well, in closing, Mr. Dionne Jr., you can give your pitch to the people of Idaho and obviously more specifically libertarians or people who are unaffiliated that can change on election day. And then you can also plug your website and anything else.
Well, let's talk about that one real quick since you brought it up about being able to change on election day. You know that right now they're trying to change that law in Idaho, right?
Well, they tried. It failed, and the session's over.
But I know, but they're going to try again. And what's going on with that is, here's the thing: is they're trying to, once again, and this is my view, we're trying to take the voice away from Americans that we don't want to vote because we don't want them influenced. Now, I understand where they're talking about. I can understand what they're trying to do, but they're taking voices away, just like with the other stuff, no more drop boxes, no more of this in rural areas. It's our job as the governor, it's my job to make it easier for every Idahoan to vote than it is to make it harder for Idahoans to vote. And with that being said, so, the only pitch I have is listen to what I have to say. Some things you're not going to agree with, and I understand that. Some things you may agree with, and I understand that also. Don't be afraid to reach out to me. My website is Dionne for IdahoGovernor2022.com. My email is on there. My phone number's on there. You can send me a text message. I do work 40 hours a week. With the reason we're having a meeting so late at night, so I am a working class Idahoan. So don't be afraid to reach out. And, if you're going to criticize, that's fine, but criticize for the right reason. Criticize not because of a point of view, but because you think that or that you just plain don't agree with something. Because like I said, I'm pro-life. I'm like most conservatives in Idaho. I just have a different view on what the government can and can't do. And, I'm going to do this right now because I always have to do this. This one right here, this is called the United States Constitution, and I have it all the time. And my Idaho Constitution is sitting over there out of reach. I actually read those things, and I think that it's very important for your governors and your elected officials to govern by those. Like I said earlier, I got very, very passionate about it because the Bill of Rights is what I am supposed to govern by. I cannot enforce any law that is contrary to the 10 Amendments, period. So if you try, we talk about these things, and we shouldn't have to be fighting the people we elect for our freedoms and liberties because they are supposed to be enforcing those freedoms and liberties. That's what I will do if I am, number one, if I win the primaries, and number two, if I'm elected as Idaho governor. You can count on that your rights, individual rights, will be protected 100% with me as the governor of Idaho.
All right. Well, we appreciate you taking time to interview with the Idaho Dispatch, and we know you're busy doing your regular job and doing a really late night interview here. But thanks again for joining.
Not a problem.